I don't know how it's going to end up, but I just feel so compelled and pulled to try something different or do what I want to do. And so that for me is your inner compass. That's your gut, that part of you that's, I know I want to do this. I want to try this. And I don't want to regret not doing it.
Welcome everyone to a Speaker Accelerator conversation series where I'm going to be featuring people who are turning their ideas and experiences and expertise into thinking an impact for others to also expand the possibilities in their life. I am very, very excited to have our guest today, Sarah Aviram, who is a speaker, author, former HR leader whose work explores fulfillment, adaptability, and how we navigate change. Her TED Talk was featured on TED.com, TED Talks Daily, and has reached over 900,000 views so far. Author of The Scenic Route, Following My Inner Compass Across 12 Countries in 12 Months, a travel memoir on identity, uncertainty, trust, and finding your way when the path ahead is not fully clear. We're going to be diving into her TED Talk process as well as the Scenic Route. I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
To be here as well. And it's so full circle. I just want to spend some time kind of setting the stage for people of kind of the crazy way that we met. Because I think it is now, we're in 2026 and we met back in 2021. And what a wild time that was in Chicago, of all places. And you were auditioning for TEDx Chicago at that time, right?
Right. I flew for the final round. Yep.
Yeah, and I remember being so moved by your talk. It was one of my favorites, if not my actual favorite. I remember because I was doing the volunteer audition reviews, and it's like I have to just go up to her and tell her how much I love this one. I want to dive into that process a little bit with you as well. So was TEDx Chicago? Where in that process was it for you for your TED journey?
Yeah, I had applied to a bunch of different TEDx's. Gotten a bunch of rejections. And, you hear that it's not always about your ideas not worth spreading. Mm-hmm. It's more like they do need to curate a certain type of event with speakers that are diverse in and of themselves, but also their content, their ideas that, pull from different industries or different, themes. And so, each rejection was just a redirection into something else. And TEDx Chicago had a very good reputation of being an excellently well-produced event. And I applied to speak. I did a round over Zoom where I kind of had to more explain my pitch and my idea. And then they took me into the final round, which I actually flew in to pitch live. Unfortunately, did not get that TEDx, but ended up getting another one in the future. And that went really well. And ended up, getting promoted to TED, which was incredible. But yeah, I would say TEDx Chicago was right in the middle of my journey.
And were you applying on your own beforehand? And were you strategic about the whole process, or was it more just like what came to you, you would apply based off of what people shared? Like,
yeah, I was really I kind of made myself a short list of the ones that I'd seen that had really high production value, that were done more than once, that I felt maybe they had a little bit more experience. Yeah, I think every TEDx event, because they're independently run and organized, has a different level of production quality, of people experience that are putting it together. So I thought, if I'm going to do it, let's see if I can get the best one possible. And so, yeah, that's how I started. And some of them, though, have certain preferences. They want someone who has a connection to that specific city. And some are not as strict about that. And so even if there was a great one I found, let's say, I don't know, in Denver, they're like, oh, are you from Denver? Have you worked in Denver? And I was like, not really, And so that can make it more challenging sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that comes up a lot. It's like, how do you share that you are connected without actually living in that particular city? And you had lived all over the world for so long. And that was actually the title, or that was the content, the idea that you were sharing. Can you share with us a little bit, just in summary, your first TED Talk, and also Remotivation, which was your first book, and how the talk linked to the book as well?
Yeah. And so in 2019, I kind of did this wild life and professional experiment where I lived in 12 countries in 12 months. And I was researching the future of work, which was all remote work. That was at the time what everyone was talking about. And this was pre-pandemic, but this was the trend that was kind of becoming more prevalent, and somehow convinced my CEO at the time to let me work remotely from around the world as the director of talent development at my New York-based tech company. And he said yes. And I took off in this wild adventure, living and working remotely around the world. And one of the main things I discovered from a professional standpoint was that so many people felt, even with the freedom and flexibility they had to work from anywhere, they still felt kind of stuck and unfulfilled, especially professionally. And they thought being able to work from anywhere would be kind of the silver bullet to happiness. And they found out it was just kind of a Band-Aid solution for the real problem, which was they just didn't like their work. And so while changing our location certainly helps us, feel motivated in certain ways, it's not the end all be all to fulfillment. And so I kind of put my HR hat on. I was like, oh, I think I can help this world of remote workers better understand what actually does lead to more motivation and fulfillment over the long term. And so that's what inspired me to write my first book, Remotivation, the Remote Worker's Ultimate Guide to Life-Changing Fulfillment. And the timing was just pretty wild because I finished the first draft of that and came home from that 1-year adventure March 1st of 2020, right as the pandemic hit, and then the whole world went remote. And so I was like, I got to get this book out there. Published the book. 2 months later, I ended up getting laid off from my job because they did a massive round of layoffs. And I was like, well, I have a body of research the world needs. I have this book. I've always wanted to do my own thing as a speaker and a coach. And that's what I ended up doing. So the last 6 years was doing lots of talks and workshops with organizations. But in that early part in 2021, when we met, I said, I'd love to spread this idea to the world. And the question that I posed and what I titled my talk was, does more freedom at work mean more fulfillment? And I kind of intentionally made it a question rather than a statement because I wanted to invite discussion and debate, because it doesn't work for everyone. It certainly works for some people. It depends on what your goals are for your life and your career. And that's kind of how the TEDx journey started.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's so impactful for me too, because as you said, right around that time, remote work was the hot topic. Everyone was figuring out how to do remote work, how to do it in a sustainable way, realizing at the same time that it wasn't the end-all solution for a lot of the worries that had already been built up. And one of the things I remember reading in your book was taking your laptop and moving it to a different location, doing the exact same work doesn't change the work that you're doing. And actually it makes you even realize the stark difference when there's no other distractions or things to really take your attention off of the work. You're in a beautiful location and you should be happy, but you're not, because you're doing the exact same thing. You just brought the laptop with you. And I think that what you were saying there was so pivotal for me and so many people. And I think that's why your talk resonated with, over 900,000 people so far, right? You had really great timing, but also it lined up really well because I think your message needed to be shared during that moment. So thank you for doing that step and sharing your idea with the world in such a important time as well. I think one of the things that comes up a lot more from a TEDx standpoint too is this idea of book promotion versus having your TED idea be an idea that's independent and non-promotional of the book. How did you navigate that particular criteria? Because I know a lot of organizers are like, don't be promotional, don't try to promote your services or whatever it is. But so many experts, that's exactly what we're doing because we want to share this information out. And it's like, how do you balance them?
Yeah, it's interesting. I did feel like the two were separate. I mean, of course, my book and my TEDx were connected as far as what the content was. But, a TEDx is supposed to be what's your idea worth spreading? And ideally, your book has an idea or a thesis or something you're passionate about that you're writing about. But I knew that the TEDx couldn't include everything in my book or all the pillars of my framework. And initially, when I wrote my first draft of my TEDx, because I have a framework that I talk about that has 6 pillars, I was like, 6 is too many to put in a 10-minute talk. No one's going to remember all 6, and then they won't really take away anything from any of them. So I narrowed it down to, okay, I'm just going to mention these three, and I'm not going to talk too theoretically about them. I'm actually going to make this more of like a personal story about how I discovered that these three are important and how I've applied the three and how they've worked for me. And so I think that was helpful to make it feel less promotional and less like I'm going to teach you something I know, and not because I'm smarter than you, but I am you, and this is what I also learned for myself. And I think that helped it become more human and resonate. I had both quantitative data and research I quoted, but also qualitative and like my experience of doing it myself, not just having like done the research on other people. And so I think that helped for it to resonate with people as well.
Yeah, I love that you surveyed people yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And really got to the root of it and created your own qualitative research. I think that was also really impactful. And I think a lot of people, when they start off doing TED, they experience it themselves and they want to share it, but you have to have something where it expands just outside of you, through the data you collected, through the patterns that you've seen, so that it becomes a universal insight that's applicable. So I love that those were pieces of your talk as well, especially for those that are going through the TEDx process right now. It's really being able to extrapolate that and ground it some real data. How was that process like? So I know you applied to a number of stages. Do you know how many you ended up applying to total, or?
I have to say probably like 10.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, 10 stages. And then you eventually did land a stage, and it was a TEDx studio. Can you dive into what a TEDx studio is like?
Yeah, so TEDx Studio was a format that started during the pandemic, where there's no live audience because, of course, none of us could be near each other. So essentially, it's just you and the camera crew and the other speakers. And at first, when I landed that one, I was like, oh, I wanted like a live event. I wanted an audience, But then I had to think about, okay, like a live audience would be great. And that's the kind of experience I had always imagined having. But at the end of the day, you can make way more impact through the video because that's what then has potential to be seen by so many more people. So I thought to myself, okay, it's really about the video more so than the live audience. So once I kind of was like, okay, it's not the experience I thought I'd have, but it's awesome that I have this opportunity. I get to share my message with the world. That's great. And what was interesting is initially they said like, oh, you can speak straight to the camera since there's no audience. And I was like, no, I'm going to pretend there's an audience. So even with like the camera crew and the other speakers, I just spoke like there was an audience. So I wanted the video to have that feel too. And I think there is something awkward about someone just looking right at you for 12 minutes and speaking if I was speaking to the camera. So that's how I chose to do it.
Yeah, and I do see how dynamic you are on that stage. And I actually love that yours was a studio because it does give people a lot more options if they want to just get their idea out, but not necessarily speak in front of a live audience. And a lot of these events, the live events are really, there's so much complexity that goes into creating a live event. Whereas studios, you rent a studio and you do the filming. And I think that gives additional access for ideas to be shared without necessarily having to create a full live event just for 8 speakers to be able to speak. Like you can have a lot more speakers have the possibility as well. So that's amazing. And also because they're focused on just the video, I feel like the quality is a bit better too. Do you feel like if you were to do it over, you would choose the studio again?
I think, well, if I was to, no, I think it was perfect the way that it turned out. I think I would do a second TED Talk, not like if I were to go back in time, but if I were to move forward, I would love to do a live event.
Yeah, just switch up the experience. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe for this next round, this next question.
Maybe.
So tell us what happened, because I know you had mentioned to me that there was a delay afterwards. And we know that you typically, after you film a TEDx, you finish the event, it can have anywhere from a few weeks to months afterwards for the post edits to be completed, for the organizer, curators, and then TED itself to review. And yours was even more delayed than the rest of your peers, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I can't remember if they said like it'll be 6 to 8 weeks or 8 to 10 weeks until the video is posted online. And so I mark the date on my calendar, those that were that range of weeks, and I'm like looking, nothing's posted. And then I'm starting to see that the videos of other people that spoke at that same event as I did theirs were being posted. And so I followed up with my TEDx organizer, and he's like, well, just some videos take longer to go through the procurement process than others. And of course, I'm telling myself all the worst case scenarios. I'm like, oh, maybe they messed up the edit, or maybe I messed up and they couldn't fix it. Or I don't know. I just was going to all the worst case scenario. Or maybe they thought my data that I quoted wasn't relevant enough or current enough or whatever. But luckily it was not the case. And I ended up getting a message from my TEDx organizer that was like, hi, we've got some great news. Your talk was flagged as being very timely and relevant. And actually TEDx wants to find a way to promote it even more themselves. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but what later it ended up being was chosen as an editor's pick by TEDx, and it was put on the homepage of TEDx's YouTube channel and kind of highlighted at the top as the editor's pick, which was super cool. And then it got thousands of views in the first 24 hours, which was amazing.
Yeah, and I think they only do 40 per year or something like that. So it's very rare to get chosen as an editor's pick. So that's really exciting that they thought yours was so timely and needed the additional promotion on the TED site.
Yeah, it was super cool. And then 9 months after that, I get an email from TED, and so not from TEDx, but TED, and they were like, we're considering highlighting your talk on TED.com as a talk of the day. And I was like, oh my gosh. And they did a lot of verification, which was really interesting and good for them. And my tip for anyone would be anytime you quote sources, make sure they're legit, make sure you you keep the links or whatever you need to kind of refer back to, because, they said, you quote this McKinsey study. Can you please send that link to that study for us? You mentioned this news article. Can you send it to us? And then they said, I thought they would just watch the TED and kind of make sure what I said was legit. But then they looked at an article I was quoted in a Forbes article. And they were like, this Forbes article, you say this, but in your TED, you say that. So they kind of asked me about what in their mind could have been a discrepancy, and they just wanted to get clarity. I was like, oh, here's the reason why for that. And they were like, okay, that's totally fine. Well, make sure your sources are legit. And also I think what can help your TEDx get elevated in any way is just having a bigger digital footprint in general, or if your thought leadership out there being seen as a credible expert in your topic. That's only going to help them be like, okay, she's legit, because promoting someone to TED, they want to make sure that, you're legit.
During that time period, did you notice was it going viral immediately just from your own promotion, or, what was the...
Well, I didn't have the chance to do any of my own promotion because it was an editor's pick right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So it was not posted before it became an editor's pick. So already picked up a lot of views. But I must say, and I know this is the case for a lot of people, it's really hard to get a lot of views in your TEDx without them helping you. It's hard. So for sure that helped a lot. But of course I put the TEDx in my signature of my email. I posted about it everywhere. I tried to do as much promotion as I could. It's hard to know how many views I would have had they not helped out.
Yeah. Did you I know some people create launch teams where you have everyone basically for the YouTube algorithm. You encourage the YouTube algorithm by getting everyone that and your social media followers to comment, share that video immediately, and in hopes that it could elevate it to TED eyes. Was that something that was part of your plan initially?
I didn't have what I would call an official launch team, but I certainly did all the things that you mentioned. I told all my friends, and I think this is the case for most videos and posts on social media. The first hour that something's posted is oftentimes if you get likes and comments, you get more traction, and then YouTube might start to show it to more people. And so I certainly told all of my friends, because someone would watch it and text me, it was so great. I'm like, no, put that under the video. Make that a public comment. Just copy paste what you just texted me under the video. So I told everyone, please like and comment, please share, especially the first day. It's really going to help the talking momentum. So I definitely did that.
Yeah, it helps so much. And anyone who wants to support, share, comment on the YouTube right away. So in that year's span though, because it sounds like 2020, 2022, you were still building up your speaker brand and pivoting away from your traditional corporate role. So during that period post TEDx, did you do a lot more of expansion of your digital footprint? And then did that just somehow line up to when TED was verifying the Forbes article? Like, was the Forbes article after or before the TED?
The Forbes article was after the TEDx was posted, but maybe before the TED. Yeah, the TED promotion. Yeah, and it wasn't intentional. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people think I need to have all my ideas and all my thoughts about a topic to be really clear and crisp before I even pitch journalists or anyone to share. I found yes, but also through the process of pitching, you actually clarify your ideas. And when a journalist or someone asks you your opinion on something, that's when sometimes you start to form it. Oh, through the question, you're challenged to actually clarify what you think. And that was my experience in writing my TEDx. Of course, I had the idea worth spreading, but through the writing of it, I really clarified the idea and how to make the point in a way that resonated and what stories I wanted to tell. And so sometimes through the process, you gain that clarity, not always before you start.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great message for a lot of people that are just starting out in their speaker journey, which is why I wanted to emphasize this too, is yes, you did the TED, but you didn't stop there and just wait for that to go viral. You were also alongside it doing the work to pitch journalists, to pitch other, I'm assuming like corporate speaking positions, to put your words out there so that it wasn't just TED, but by the time they looped back around to you a year later, they saw all the different things that you had been doing and really had more of that footprint for them to say like, oh wow, like yes, she is really credible in this space.
And I will say to everyone, don't think that it's only worth it if you can get promoted to TED, because also there's no guarantees, and there's a lot of luck in that, and there's who knows, it could be like one random person sharing it that's famous. You just don't know. But having a professional video of you speaking, whether you want to make your career in speaking or coaching or something else, is going to help your credibility. It's going to help, even if you're just sharing it in an email with one specific person, it's going to give someone on the other end an idea of like what you believe in, what it might be like to work with you, what you might look like on stage if you spoke at their company. And so that's worth a lot, regardless of whether your talk is viewed thousands of times by the public. It's still a professional video of you speaking that's with a credible organization.
Yeah, exactly. And it shows a glimpse of what you care about and what you have the expertise in as well. Did it change your visibility, your clientele? Was there a significant impact in doing TED? Just like real talk.
It's interesting because like it's hard to say, because I mean, there's no silver bullet. And, part of me was kind of like, oh my gosh, it's now on TED. People are going to be banging down my door wanting to work with me. That did not happen. But there were subtle other ways. Definitely a couple times where people referenced it. Oh, I saw your TED. So I would say it's like one point of credibility, just like many other things are points of credibility. I don't think it make or break kind of thing where, oh, I have that, so now I'm, home free. But I had some like interesting things happen that kind of were really fun that came out of it. For example, I noticed on LinkedIn in a particular week, I was getting a lot of views of my profile from students at a university in Kansas. And it was just really random. And it was like dozens of students and all in 1 week. And I'm like, this is kind of odd. So I ended up messaging one of them. I'm just genuinely curious. I've been getting a lot of views from students at Kansas City, whatever, like what's going on? And they were like, oh, we're in a class called like business communication. And our professor, the assignment is to watch a TED Talk and show how it used both quantitative and qualitative data to make the point. And they said our professor gave us 5 examples of talks that do that very well. And yours is one of the talks.
Wow.
And then part of the assignment was like, look up this person on LinkedIn, see what their background is, see if they're credible, whatever. So it was just like funny, it wasn't some business enhancing thing for me, but I don't know, it was just so interesting to see the different ways people were using the TED Talk. And that was just a fun thing that I learned that came out of it.
Wow, you really never know where your idea is going to be shared and how, through what lens they're even looking at it at, right? So that's so interesting that like you go in thinking you're going to make an impact in a specific way, and there's so many different ways that you're making an impact.
Super cool. Yeah, totally.
Amazing. And what was from start to finish, from the inception of, I think I want to give a TED Talk to I'm on stage? What was that for you?
Ooh, that was probably it's a good question. I want to say probably like minimum a year, maybe 2 years. I think maybe close two from the time where I was like, I think I want to do this thing. And I started to research and how to write one. And I, worked with a coach, and then I applied and got rejected. Then months went by. Yeah, I would say probably a year and a half to two. I had to think about it.
Do you think that working with a coach was an essential part of your process, or it just made things easier?
I had a draft. I just wanted to knock it out of the park, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And I think it was really helpful. And I think what my coach especially helped me do was really personalize it in a way, like I mentioned before, that I wasn't like, I'm the expert and you're not the expert. And it was like more, I'm one of you. And I think that was a nice way to make it really human, and also just help me think about what are the quotable lines. And this sounds like but honestly, it's important. What are going to be those quotable lines people are going to say, she said this thing, or that really resonated, and punching them up to make them really solid things. And also what was really helpful for me, honestly, was doing speaking the talk aloud to lots of friends in advance, because I didn't have slides. Some people have slides with their talk. I didn't have slides. So anytime I would quote data, you have to make sure it's not confusing to people, because sometimes people do need to see something visually to really get what you're trying to say. And so I remember one friend being like, wait, what are you trying to say with that data? She's like, what are you really trying to say when you quote this article? And I was like, what I'm trying to say is what people are saying and what they're doing is inconsistent. And she's like, ooh, say that. Like that, the distillation of the data in a way that's really powerful. So I said the numbers, but then I also said, and here's the point of that. So it's really helpful, because in your head it makes sense and you've been practicing and it, but saying it out loud to people who haven't is really helpful.
Yeah, and it also helps with the nerves in the very beginning, especially. I did mine without slides either, and it becomes a jumble after a while. You have to really memorize in structures. At least that's how I did it, so that I knew each section and then a general idea of what I was trying to get out of each section in case I somehow froze. And I completely forgot what I was supposed to say word for word. At least I generally knew what I was going to deliver. But I think practicing in front of people, you get those words out there, you shake a little of those nerves out of your system as well. And also make it sound more human too, for honing in on that piece. I think when we're writing it versus when we're saying it, you start realizing, oh, I don't like to say it in that specific way, even though it looks paper.
Speaking something aloud, I write a lot, and it's very different. And you realize when you speak aloud, and you want to sound natural, you want to sound like you. And sometimes our written voice can be, it depends. It could be more formal if you're doing more of a professional writing or whatever it is. So yeah, it's important to say it out loud and to say it to people and make sure it resonates. And I would literally say to my friends after my talk, I would do it, and I'd be like, what did you take away from that? What do you think is the point of my talk? What if they said something totally random? I'm like, oh, that's not what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
so,
get it out good. Before you get onto the stage and deliver this. How has the difference between doing the TED Talk and practicing for it versus paid corporate or paid professional speaking? Because a lot of people are coming into this either as professional speakers wanting to do a TED Talk, or vice versa, wanting to do TED and then pivot and use that as a launching board for professional speaking. But there's not, I don't know if that's tangible yet in a lot of people's minds. So how do you differentiate those two paths and those two types?
Similar, but it's different. So when I do a keynote talk, it's like 60 minutes, right? And I usually have my slides and I tell lots of stories. And if I don't make the point exactly in this spot, I have plenty of time to make the point later. And I don't memorize it word for word, but I know what I'm going to hit on. I know my points, I know my stories, I know my data. When you're doing a TEDx talk and you have, 10 to 12 minutes or whatever it is, you want everything you say to matter and be super relevant. And it was important for me that I memorized it. And I know some people, they kind of do more off the cuff. And I don't know if that was right for me or not, because it was really challenging because I'm not used to memorizing, and it was training for a different race. It's like training. It's like you are a marathon runner and like you think you can be a sprinter. They're both running, but they're very different and they require very different types of training. And so I locked in my talk as far as, no more changes anymore. I would say 2 weeks before the talk.
Oh, wow.
I think I would have done it even earlier. I think like a literal 1 month before the talk, no more changes, and just practicing the talk, where it's so locked in that you can say it in your sleep, where you're not thinking about your gestures, you're natural about it. I would have done that earlier. Yeah, I think it was challenging for me to memorize it.
For sharing the distinction, because I think a lot of people are like, I do corporate speaking all the time for 60 plus minutes. It should be fine. It's a whole different ball game trying to memorize something without slides and really primed for impact and really concise use of words. All of the words that you.
It's like doing an acting monologue. Oh, this is what actors have to do. Like literally, it's wild. It's very different.
Yeah, exactly. Emotions, all of it matters. But it's possible. And I think that's the great thing is like you could do one, you could shift into the other. Just know that they have like very different styles of delivery. So after all of that process, one, it sounds like you want to do another one, right? You said maybe for your second time.
I don't know. I'm kind of throwing that out there. I don't have that in yet, but you never know.
You never know. Yeah, don't close it off. And then two, what advice would you give someone who has just had it in their mind that, yes, I'm going to do a TED Talk one day or TEDx Talk one day?
Go for it. Hone your idea. Talk to people who've done it. Work with you. Yeah, I mean, just keep going for it. Like, don't let the rejections deter you if you really believe in your idea worth spreading. I got so many rejections. I just got into a state of, I know it's not if, it's just when. I know I'll get eventually. I just have to find the right one. So yeah, I would just encourage people to keep going for it if you feel passionate about your idea.
Yeah, and find the right stage. I think mine took 5 years, but all in all, I think I applied to less than 10. I just got really discouraged in the middle because I applied to a couple in the beginning. I didn't get it. And I was like, well, maybe mine's not scientific enough, or maybe I need to get a PhD first. There's certain organizers that look for different credibility factors, and it can get really discouraging. And I think that's the piece that I hope a lot of people realize is you don't necessarily need the PhD, but you can do data, collect your own data, qualitative, quantitative. You can humanize it. You can pull case studies from your own experience, from people, the communities that you've worked with, and that could be part of your TED Talk. So yeah, don't get discouraged and get it done and get some publications in. So one of the things that you mentioned as you were talking about the keynote speaking and the workshops that you were hosting, and that was that a lot of people were relating to your travel stories most. And so that was what really like perked their ears. They're like, oh, tell us more about that time when you rode on the back of a motorcycle. So, and that inspired the Scenic Route, right? So tell us a little bit more about this new book coming up.
Yeah, so the last 6 years been doing lots of speaking. I moved away from talking about remote work and more. Remote work was always the lens. The content was always really about fulfillment and performance in your career. So the lens was initially remote work, and now the lens is more of an ever-changing world, a lot of uncertainty. And so how do we manage through times of change and feel fulfilled? And as I have a background in change management, I've worked in companies, organizations, I have a business academic background in studying that. And of course I could give an audience like, oh, here's a case study of another similar industry where they managed through a time of change and how they did it. But people want to be taken out of their day-to-day is what I found. And they actually want to hear something they haven't heard before. And so anytime I would incorporate a travel story into my keynote talk, and I would say, and here's me on the back of a motorbike in Vietnam and what I learned about adaptability, they'd be in the story and they would actually take more of the lessons back with them. And so I was like, well, these stories are more fun for me to tell and they're more fun for the audience to hear. And so I thought to myself, I think I have a second book in me, because my first book in 2020 was more the professional side of me working remotely across all these countries. But I didn't talk as much about the personal side and what I went through and my adventures and the challenges I was faced with and all the fun stuff too. And so I decided I'm going to write this second book. It's called The Scenic Route, Following My Inner Compass Across 12 Countries in 12 Months. And it's one story from each of the 12 countries. So it's not like a whole book about what happens the whole entire year, but I anchor each chapter is like one story from that specific month. And it explores themes that come up during times of change, like thoughts about our identity and self-trust and vulnerability and belonging. And so it's a very personal book. I can't believe I'm putting it out there. I'm like, here's my diary world. But I think it will resonate both with people who love travel, people who are going through a specific life change, people who love like a woman's memoir. and hopefully organizations who want to help their people manage through times of change and uncertainty. And I think disguised in travel stories are some really powerful lessons about how to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I just think of how relevant this is with like the work I'm doing, Travel Not to Escape. Like so many people end up going on trips thinking it'll solve their whole lives and that it will be the fulfillment that they're looking for. And then they end up faced with these challenges abroad: identity, belonging, lack of connection. A lot of people experience grief and aren't able to handle it. And a lot of times people don't realize that all of this is happening beneath the surface of an Instagram photo. And I love that you are diving in. So is there a teaser? You said motorbike in Vietnam. I very much like that. What other teaser type stories we have awaiting us?
Ooh, well, there's a story I love that it's my chapter about Thailand, of being in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And when I was first writing it, I was like, okay, which story do I want to tell? Do I want to tell the experience of learning how to meditate from a Buddhist monk in a monastery? Or do I want to tell the story about going to a drag show put on by ladyboys, which was an incredibly wild experience too? But those are totally different, unrelated stories.
Yeah.
So I started to write both, and I said, I'll just choose whichever one I like better. And I realized these stories are actually way more connected than you can imagine. Because what I learned from both the monks and the ladyboys is so much about identity. And from the monks learning that the way to freedom and peace and liberation is through releasing identity, through letting go of titles and your ego and the need to be seen as something specific. And through the ladyboys, I learned about how to embrace your identity, how to be loud and bold about it, and that the way to freedom and liberation is expressing yourself in any way you wish. And I thought it was fascinating. Both groups are looking to get to the same point, and there's two different ways to get there. And so I leave myself and the reader with two questions at the end of that chapter, which is, one is like similar to what the monks taught me: who am I if I didn't have to be anything or anyone? And then on the other hand, what the ladyboys taught me is, who would I be if I allow myself to be everything I want to be? And so those are the kinds of deep personal reflections in the story. So I bring you on the adventure with me, and then end each story with some kind of personal reflection.
I love that. I have been both to the monasteries and meditated with the monks, and also to the drag shows in Chiang Mai. So I can dive in with you, but also I know that those lessons are ones that you can take even if you haven't had those personal experiences. And be able to extrapolate. But I love how you were able to connect those two. So I'm very, very excited, especially for that Thailand chapter. What does following your inner compass mean to you?
For me, it means following the pull to what is exciting to you, and not taking the path that is expected of you, or maybe the old version of you would have had you take. It's listening to yourself. It's listening to the voice inside you that says, I don't know how it's going to end up, but I just feel so compelled and pulled to try something different or do what I want to do. And so that for me is your inner compass. That's your gut, that part of you that's, I know I want to do this. I want to try this. And I don't want to regret not doing it. And so for me, that's what inner compass is about.
I love that. How do you, because we all want to follow our inner compass, but there's so much holding us back, right? And you mentioned that with the letting go of the identities that we've stepped into. So how do you move forward knowing what it is that is calling you, but still feeling chained perhaps to ties from older versions of you that you have?
It's really hard letting go of a lot of those shoulds. I should go for this promotion, or I should have this kind of career, this kind of job. Once I tried to replace the shoulds, I'm like, if I replace the shoulds with I want to or I don't want to, how do I feel about that sentence? If I said I should go for this job, what if I said I want to go for this job? And I would be like, oh, but I don't. You almost right away know what it is. Or like, no, I want to because, and if you're able to rationalize it to yourself in a way that feels good to you, in a way that's, no, I get it, because even if the answer is, it will give me the money I need to then start my own business. And so you have, for me, it's all about being intentional. And I just think a lot of times we're going through the motions of our life and we're like, why am I still doing this? And the reasons that stood 3 years ago don't exist anymore, and you're just doing it today because you did it yesterday. But even if the answer isn't something super exciting to you in the moment, if you know it's going to lead to something that you want, you get to decide whether it makes sense for you right now.
Mhm.
And so I think try replacing the shoulds with I want or I don't want, things that are more concrete, and see how you react to it. And then you get to make a decision. Sometimes it's not these huge overhauls to your life that you need. It's really small tweaks that will make a difference. The tough conversation you're avoiding having, or the assumptions that you're making about the expectations of your family or your partner that don't actually exist anymore, and just putting it out in the open, and you'd maybe surprise yourself.
Yeah, I actually you ring on something really true that like personally I'd gone through, where growing up with a strict mom and immigrant household, I had a lot of pressure growing up and a lot of expectations for the type of success that would be deemed successful. And what ended up happening was I evolved, but also my parents evolved. And what I thought was still the marker for success, and I was fearing saying, hey, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to go travel the world. And they're like, okay, yeah, have fun, just be safe. But hold on, when did this change? Because there's definitely a gap between the version of my parents that I grew up with versus the version now. Like they grew up at the same pace and maybe different, but I think it's challenging those shoulds that you said from the past, and maybe they're not the same things today, but you've still created and are still living by that same story.
I think we all do that. And that was the same for me. When I decided I wanted to travel too, I was like, how am I going to tell my parents,
Yeah.
And I felt like so much conviction that this is what I wanted, that I was like, okay, who around me is someone I know that's going to support this idea? So I kind of got my siblings on board first, and they were rooting for me. And I was like, okay, all right, I've got these people, and now I'm going to go to my parents and tell them. And you're right. I think, it took them a little while to get, they're like, wait, isn't this going to hurt your career? And don't you want to meet a partner? And like all these things. Why are those things mutually exclusive? Why does like doing one not allow me to do the other? So I think those conversations are hard, but I think you can surprise yourself, and the people around you might surprise you.
Yeah, I think it's just having those hard conversations and listening and jumping into the changes and uncertainty full force, which leads me into, I guess, so you had traveled a ton, and then you've created a base in New York, so where you're at right now. How has that changed your relationship with travel, or both good, bad? Has there been a change at all?
Yeah. It's interesting. My priorities have definitely shifted. I was always a huge traveler. So not just that year. Before that, I'd been to a lot of countries. And after that experience, I also lived in Mexico City for 2 years. So I've been back in New York about 2 years now. This is where I'm from. It's where I grew up. All my friends or family are here. And I think for me, I did decide after a little while, I wanted the grounding of a home. I wanted to be near family. Doesn't mean I can't take my trips whenever I want, but kind of living more of that nomadic lifestyle, that desire changed for me. And it feels good, and I think it's another, wait, but I wrote this whole book. I'm supposed to be like this. And it's like, no, I get to decide what I like, and it's funny. It's like, initially when I came back to New York, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so weird. I'm not like, New York is not a place you choose to live if you're a digital nomad, but I don't consider myself that anymore. It was a time of my life, and it was an amazing time. And now I choose to be near family and friends and in the city I love. And so I think being able to change like that identity affiliation whenever you want is important. And I still love travel. I love the lessons it teaches me. I still plan on doing it, and I still do it, just in a different way.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing too, is even the identity of a traveler can change. And we get so locked into specific identities that when you're not doing that one thing consistently, you feel like, oh, am I a fraud? Am I no longer a traveler? You're like, no, you're still a traveler, but you're prioritizing other parts of your life right now. And that will always be one avenue for you, and one thing that you love to do. But it's a beautiful tapestry of what makes you you. And I think even as I've been talking to some friends that are in the travel space, and every time they settle in for 6 months, you're like, oh my God, am I not a traveler anymore? You're like, no, you still are. It's okay. Yeah. Oh, who am I if I'm not this? And it's almost like repeat. If I wasn't a consultant, or if I wasn't in corporate or in tech, then who am I? And then we almost assign that same identity as a traveler and lock ourselves into that. It's like, no, we could be fluid, and whatever identity is right for this season of our life. So I love that you've embraced that in New York.
It's like a mindset. Being a traveler to me is like being someone with like curiosity and being open to new experiences. And I tell people because traveling is not accessible for everyone, whether it's physically, financially, whatever it might be. There's so many exciting and new experiences to be found 2 blocks from where you live. And I tell people, you take this way to work, you walk these 3 blocks. What if you made a left instead of a right? And honestly, I've done that before. I'm like, oh, there's a yoga studio here. Who knew? And it became my new favorite place. And I built a community there. I mean, you just don't know what experiences await you when you get outside of your normal routines. And I think travel is a really concentrated period in which it kind of forces you to do that. But you can create those opportunities for yourself right where you live by trying new things, going to a new cafe, trying new drinks, speaking to the barista that you've never spoken to before. All those are having a traveler's mindset. And I used to joke with friends, why aren't I when I'm on vacation, like you call it vacation mode, like I'm talking to everyone, I'm this and that, and I come back to New York and I'm back in my old routine. It's like, why can't I have that traveler's mindset in my own city? And what would that look like? And that's a really cool and exciting way to think about living that kind of open life in your own hometown. And I think that's very accessible for people.
It is. And I think it makes everything so much better no matter where you are, because you can bring that mindset with you anywhere. You can bring a very closed mindset even when you're traveling. You're like, I don't really want to try going to something new. I want what I want for breakfast every single morning, same Starbucks coffee. Like, I just want this. Nothing to be said, nothing bad to be said about that. Sometimes you need the stability of a grounding, recurring breakfast. But I think that you can bring a traveler open mindset, or you can bring a closed mindset wherever you are in the world. And, you get, so I think that that's also really beautiful. So if you're envisioning the scenic route, and actually let's go back to Remotivation as well. So who did you write these 2 books for? And are they different people or just the same person at different stages? Like, tell me about who you wrote these 2 for.
That's such a good question. I think the first one was very clearly for the remote worker who was like, I thought I'd be fulfilled and motivated and something is off. And I really want to continue to have this flexibility and freedom, but I also want to love what I do, make an impact, feel challenged by my work. I'm not just doing it for the paycheck. How do I make that happen? So it was really for the first book. This one is not for the remote worker. I mean, it includes a remote worker, but it's not exclusively for remote worker, because I mentioned remote work, but it's not really about remote work. It's for anyone that wants to see the world through different eyes, for people that love adventure and storytelling and to learn about different cultures around the world and enjoys deep self-reflection. And so it reads like a travel memoir. It invites you into the adventure with me.
Amazing. Can't wait. When does it come out?
It comes out August 18th officially, but it's available for pre-order now if you go to anywhere books are sold. Or you can go to the scenicroutebook.com and get links to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, everywhere. I also have a bunch of pre-order bonuses. So if you order through those, any vendors, but if you go to the scenicroutebook.com and you put in your email address, I'll send you the first 3 chapters right away, a book club discussion guide. It's great for book clubs, a work team discussion guide, and an interview like this, but between me and my editor. And that's kind of fun because we talk about the behind the scenes of putting a book together and what does it take and how did we choose the stories and what did we leave out or in. And so it's kind of a fun conversation.
Amazing. Oh, okay. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom, your TEDx journey, as well as your scenic route with us.
Thank you so much, Philippe. I really enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Thank you. And for anyone who is excited to dive into the scenic route, I will link all those links and also Sarah's LinkedIn as well. So you too, like the University of Kansas, can stalk her LinkedIn.
Love it.
Amazing. Thanks so much for being on, and I will see y'all later.